There's a 90-minute window every single morning where your brain is physically unlocked, wide open. And almost everyone alive spends it staring at a screen, handing the controls to someone else. Everything you've been told about willpower is the exact opposite of what your brain actually does before 10 in the morning. You've heard it your whole life. Discipline. Motivation. Just decide to change. Push harder. And maybe you've tried, really tried, to become a calmer person, a sharper person, someone who follows through. And it works for a week, maybe two. And then, without warning, you're back. Same reactions, same habits, same version of you that you swore you'd left behind. Here's what no one explained to you. The reason you keep snapping back isn't weakness. It's timing. You've been trying to rewrite your operating system while the system was locked. Stay with me, because what comes next changes how you'll wake up tomorrow. When you sleep, your brain waves drop into the slowest, deepest frequencies your nervous system produces. And as you wake, you don't jump straight into full alertness. You climb, slowly, through distinct electrical states, from the deep, slow waves of sleep, up through a dreamlike border state, into a relaxed and open frequency, and only then, into the fast, sharp, analytical mode you live in all day. And here's the part that should stop you cold. In those first stretches after waking, the gatekeeper isn't fully online yet. The critical, judging, that'll never work for someone like me, part of your mind. It's still loading, which means whatever you feed yourself in that window goes in almost unfiltered, straight past the bouncer, right into the part of you that runs 95% of your life without asking permission. So what do most people do with the most suggestible minutes of their entire day? They reach for the phone. Before their feet touch the floor, they've absorbed someone's outrage, someone's highlight reel, a dozen demands on their attention, 3 small spikes of stress. They've handed their open, unguarded brain to 100 strangers and let them set the frequency for the whole day. And then they wonder why, by noon, they feel scattered, reactive, behind. Over the course of this conversation, I'm going to open 3 doors for you, and I'm going to walk you through every one before we're done. The first door is the mechanism, what's actually happening in your brain in that morning window, on the level of electricity and chemistry, and why it makes you more programmable than at any other moment of the day. The second door is the error. There's one specific thing nearly everyone does in the morning that quietly guarantees the day runs them, instead of the other way around. You're probably doing it. I did it for years. And the third door is the blueprint. A precise, repeatable practice for those first waking minutes, not affirmations in a mirror, not forcing yourself to feel grateful when you don't. Something that actually reaches the body. Something the research on mental rehearsal backs up cleanly. Let me give you the first piece of proof now, so you know this conversation is going somewhere real. Neuroscientists have studied people learning a simple sequence on a piano. One group physically practiced. Another group never touched the keys. They only rehearsed it in their minds, eyes closed, finger by finger. After 5 days, brain scans showed both groups had grown nearly the same new neural circuitry. The brain that only imagined the movement had changed almost as much as the brain that performed it. Read that again. Your brain can be physically reshaped by attention alone, by what you rehearse internally before you've moved a muscle. Now hold that fact next to the morning window. A few minutes when the gate is down, the brain is unusually plastic, and rehearsal alone can rewire you. That's not a self-help slogan. That's a lever. And almost no one is pulling it. So the question stops being whether you can change. It becomes something sharper, something we have to face head-on first. If the brain is that open, that early, what exactly is it that keeps slamming it shut and dragging you back to who you were yesterday? That's where we go next. Watch what your brain does the instant you grab that phone. It's worth slowing down because it happens in seconds, and almost no one sees it. The moment information floods in, a message, a headline, a notification, your nervous system reads it as input that demands a response. And your brain doesn't have a separate channel for small daily stress. It uses the same ancient system it built to survive a predator: the alarm circuit, the fight-or-flight switch. Here's what's strange. That switch was designed for a threat that's right in front of you and then over. You run, you escape, the chemicals clear, you return to balance. But your coworker's email isn't a lion. The bad news on the screen isn't chasing you across a field. The threat never physically arrives, and it never physically ends. So the alarm just stays on. Low, humming, all day. Have you ever noticed you can feel tense before anything has actually happened? That's the phenomenon. You can switch on the entire stress response by thought alone. Just by anticipating your problems, replaying a conflict, scrolling someone else's chaos. The body can't tell the difference between a real event in front of you and a vivid one inside your head. It just obeys. And when that system fires, your attention does something specific and measurable. It narrows. It locks onto the material world. Objects, people, threats, the screen. Your focus contracts to a pinpoint. Everything wide, open, and creative in you goes quiet. Because a narrowed brain is a survival brain, and survival doesn't have time for possibility. Now, layer the timing on top. This is happening in the exact window when your brain was supposed to be climbing gently out of its slow, open states. Instead of rising through that calm, suggestible frequency, you've yanked yourself straight into high alert. You've skipped the open door entirely and slammed into the hardest, fastest, most defended version of your mind before you've even stood up. There's a way to see this directly. When the brain is under that kind of stress, it stops working as a single, unified whole. Different regions start firing out of sync, like instruments in an orchestra, all playing their own song. Brain imaging shows it. The activity becomes fragmented, compartmentalized. Regions that should be talking to each other go silent toward one another. The technical word is that coherence drops. The smooth, organized, whole brain pattern breaks apart. And you feel that fragmentation, even if you've never had a word for it. It's the scattered morning, the 5 tabs open in your head, the sense that you're reacting to your day instead of directing it, the inability to hold one clear thought because a dozen are firing at once. Here's the first quiet truth I promise to give back to you. That scattered feeling is not your personality. It's not just how you are in the mornings. It's a brain state, a measurable, changeable electrical pattern that you walked into by accident, usually within 60 seconds of opening your eyes. And if it's a state you walked into, then it's a state you can walk out of. Even better, it's one you never had to enter in the first place. But to do that, you have to understand something deeper than what's happening. You have to understand why it happens, why a single glance at a screen can hijack an entire nervous system that quickly. Because the answer isn't really about the phone at all. The phone is just the trigger. The real machinery is chemical. It runs far below your awareness. And once you see how it works, you'll never look at your morning the same way again. That's the next door. So why does it grip you so fast? To answer that, we have to go underneath the behavior, down to the chemistry. Because the phone isn't the addiction, the chemistry is. When that alarm system fires, your body releases a rush of stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, the whole cascade. And these chemicals do something you need to understand clearly. They feel like energy. They sharpen you. They make you alert, focused, urgent, awake. For a moment, you feel switched on, powerful even. And here's the trap inside that. Anything that reliably changes how you feel can become something you reach for. Not because it's good for you, because it's familiar. Sit with this, because it's the hinge the whole video turns on. People don't just get addicted to substances. They get addicted to emotional states, to the feeling. The rush of stress hormones can become its own craving, and the body will go looking for the situations, the thoughts, the conflicts that produce it, just to feel that familiar surge again. That's why someone can stay in a job they resent, a relationship that drains them, an argument they could walk away from. On some level, the body has learned to need the emotion the situation provides. Take away the enemy, and it goes looking for a new one. Not because the person is broken, because the chemistry has a memory and it wants its dose. Now connect this to a principle that governs your entire brain. Nerve cells that fire together, wire together. Every time you think a thought and it produces a feeling, and that feeling drives a behavior, and the behavior recreates the situation that triggers the same thought. You strengthen that loop. You wire it tighter. You make it more automatic. Do that for years, and the loop runs without you. The thought fires the emotion. The emotion confirms the thought. And your biology, your brain chemistry, your hormones, even which of your genes are switched on or off in that moment, settles into the same pattern it ran yesterday. Same input, same chemistry, same you. Here's the part that should land hard. By the time you're an adult, the overwhelming majority of this is running below your awareness. A redundant set of automatic thoughts, reactions, and emotions acquired through sheer repetition until the body knows how to be you better than your conscious mind does. You're not choosing most of it. You're replaying it. Which closes the first loop I opened at the start. I told you the morning window matters because the brain is unguarded then. Now you know why that's so dangerous and so powerful. In that window, you're closest to the subconscious, closest to the program itself. The part of you that runs the show is briefly within reach, so picture the two roads out of bed. Road 1. You wake, you grab the phone, you spike the stress chemistry, you reinforce the exact emotional loop you've run 10,000 times. You don't just have a bad morning, you wire yesterday's self a little deeper. Again. Road 2. You wake, and for a few minutes you don't feed the old chemistry anything. You leave the trigger untouched. And in that silence, the loop has nothing to run on. But knowing the mechanism isn't enough. Because here's what's quietly devastating. Most people who learn all of this still change nothing. They understand the chemistry perfectly and stay exactly the same. There's a specific reason for that. A single error in how we think about change itself. And until you see it, every morning routine you try will quietly fail. That's where we go now. Here's the error. And it's so common, so invisible, that you've almost certainly built your entire approach to change on top of it. The error is this. You've been trying to change your life before changing your state. Watch how it works. You wait. You wait to feel successful until the money arrives. You wait to feel loved until the right person shows up. You wait to feel calm until the stress is gone, to feel whole until you're finally healed, to feel free until the circumstances change. You're standing there every single day, waiting for something out there to change so that something in here can finally feel different. That sounds reasonable. It sounds like just how life works. And it is exactly backwards. Because here's what the science says about your brain. Your inner state isn't the result of your life. For most people, most of the time, it's the cause. The emotion you carry shapes the thoughts you think. The thoughts shape the choices you make. The choices shape your behavior. The behavior creates your experiences. And those experiences produce what? The very same emotion you started with. It's a closed loop, a snake eating its own tail. So when you wait for the outside to change first, you've trapped yourself. You're trying to feel new while running the old loop, and the loop only knows how to reproduce the past. Let me say the uncomfortable part out loud. If 90% of the thoughts you think today are the same thoughts you thought yesterday, then you're not living forward. You're memorizing the past and calling it your future. This is the error that quietly kills every morning routine. Most people approach change as the same person they've always been. They try to build a new life with the old self still at the controls. And it cannot work because the self that wakes up reaching for the phone, spiking the same stress, feeling the same familiar dread, is the program. You can't run new software through a self that is the old program. Here's where it gets sharper, and I want you to feel the weight of this. There's a principle in neuroscience worth knowing. No new information can enter your nervous system if it doesn't match your emotional state. Sit with that. You can be handed the exact right answer, the perfect advice, the proven method, and you will not be able to act on it if you're locked in an emotion that contradicts it. The state filters the information. Feel stuck, and "you can change" simply doesn't land. It bounces off. That's why you've heard brilliant advice and done nothing with it. Not because you're lazy, because you received it in the wrong state. Now bring it back to the morning. This is the second loop closing, the error I promised to expose. The mistake isn't that you reach for the phone. The mistake is deeper. You let the outside world set your emotional state before you've chosen one yourself. You let 100 strangers decide how you feel, and then you spend the whole day trying to act like a different person than the one they made you into. You're trying to change your behavior, but behavior is downstream. The real lever is the state you're in when the behavior happens. So the correct order, the thing almost no one does, is to change the state first, to generate the inner condition of the life you want before the proof arrives, to feel settled before the day earns it, not as a trick, as a cause. I know how that sounds. Abstract, maybe even impossible. Feel a way I have no reason to feel yet? So let me stop explaining and show you a real person who learned this the hard way. What it actually costs to keep waiting for the outside to change first, and the precise moment they realized the order was reversed. There was a man, a 52-year-old operations director in Columbus, Ohio. I'll keep him anonymous because the point isn't who he was. The point is how much of him you might recognize. By every visible measure, he had done it right. 2 kids through college, a house nearly paid off, a title that meant something. People came to him for steadiness. He was the calm one, the dependable one, the man who handled things. But every morning began the same way. His eyes would open in the dark, around 5:40, and before his feet found the floor, his hand found the phone. Email first. Always email. 3 messages in, his jaw was already tight. By the time he was upright, the day had already won. He didn't see it as a problem. He saw it as being responsible, staying on top of things. That's the story he told himself. That the tension was the price of caring, the cost of being the one everyone relied on. What he didn't see was the loop. The morning dread fed the sharp tone at the office. The sharp tone created distance with his team. The distance created more problems to manage, and the problems gave him something to feel tense about the next morning, which confirmed all over again that the tension was justified, around and around, for years. His wife noticed it before he did. She'd say quietly, "You're already gone when you wake up." He didn't understand what she meant. He was right there, but he wasn't. The body was at the breakfast table. The mind was 3 crises ahead, marinating in a stress that hadn't happened yet. Here's the part that's hard to watch. He was, on some level, addicted to it. Not to the phone, to the state. The low hum of urgency had become so familiar that calm felt wrong. Felt like he was forgetting something, dropping a ball. On the rare quiet morning, he'd feel uneasy until he found something to worry about. The body was craving its own chemistry, and it always got its dose. People kept handing him the answer. A book his daughter mailed him, dog-eared on the right pages. A doctor who said the word cortisol and suggested he slow down in the mornings. A friend who'd changed his own life and tried, gently, to explain how. And he heard all of it. He even agreed with it. And he did nothing, because the advice never matched the state he was in when he received it. It bounced off the tension like rain off glass. Then came the morning that broke the pattern. Not a heart attack. Nothing cinematic. Just a Tuesday. His youngest, home from college, came down early and found him at the counter, shoulders up around his ears, thumb scrolling, face already hardened at 6 in the morning. She stopped in the doorway, and she said, without any drama, "Dad, you look like that every single morning. I don't think I've ever seen you wake up soft." And something in the word landed, soft. He stood there holding the phone, and for the first time he saw it from the outside. Saw the man his family woke up to every day. Not the steady one, the braced one. The one who armored up before the day had even asked him to fight. He realized, standing in that kitchen, that he had spent years waiting to feel calm. Once the quarter closed, once the kids were settled, once things slowed down. And things had slowed down. The kids were settled, and the calm had never come. Because he'd been waiting for the outside to deliver a feeling that only the inside could generate. That was the cost made visible. Not money. Not health exactly. Something quieter and more expensive than both. And that's where we have to look next. At the real price of getting the order wrong. Because it's larger than one tense morning. It compounds, so let's name the real cost. Not the dramatic version, the quiet one, the one that actually takes the years. Start with the body, because this part isn't metaphor. That stress system you switch on each morning was built for emergencies. Short, sharp, then over. Run, escape, recover. But when you keep it on, low and constant, day after day, the body never returns to balance. And here's the thing about a system designed for emergencies. It cannot tell the difference between a real one and an imagined one. The same chemistry floods you whether a threat is in the room or just in your inbox. No living system is meant to stay in emergency mode indefinitely. When it does, that imbalance slowly becomes the new normal. The body recalibrates around the stress and starts treating braced as baseline. You stop noticing it. You think it's just your personality. It isn't. It's an accumulated state. But the body is only the first invoice. The larger cost is subtler. It's the cost to your attention. Remember what stress does to the brain. It narrows you. It pulls your focus down onto the immediate, the material, the threat. Which means every morning you start in that state. You've shrunk your own bandwidth before the day begins. The creative thought, the wider perspective, the patient solution. They require an open brain. And you traded yours away at 6 a.m. for a hit of urgency. Multiply that by years. How many ideas never arrived because the mind that could have caught them was too narrowed to notice? How many of the best responses you were capable of never showed up because you met the moment in survival instead of in clarity? Here's the cost that should sting the most. It's the cost to who you became. Because the brain wires whatever it repeats. Every morning spent in reactive tension didn't just ruin that morning. It laid down another layer of circuitry that made the next tense morning easier, more automatic, more you. You weren't just having stressful days. You were practicing being a stressed person, rehearsing it, getting good at it. And you get extraordinarily good at whatever you practice. That's not encouragement here. That's the warning. Practice bracing for 10,000 mornings and you don't just feel braced. You become someone who literally doesn't know how to wake up any other way. The state hardens into an identity. Let me ask you something directly. How many years have you already spent telling yourself you'll feel different once things settle down? And how many times have things actually settled? And the feeling still didn't come? That's the cruelest part of the wrong order. The outside circumstances you were waiting on, some of them do arrive. The promotion comes, the kids grow up, the crisis passes, and the relief you were promised doesn't, because the loop was never about the circumstances. It was about the state you carried into them. You can change your whole life and bring the same self along for the ride, and feel exactly as you always did in a better house. That's the hidden price of the error. Not that you fail to get what you want, that you get it. And it changes nothing because you never changed the one variable that was actually running the show. And here's the quiet tragedy underneath all of it. None of this required a single new circumstance to fix. The lever was always internal, always available, sitting untouched in those first waking minutes, every single day, while you reached past it for the phone. So now we turn. We've named the mechanism, the error, and the cost. It's time for the blueprint, the precise thing to do in that morning window, before 10 a.m., before the gate closes. This is the part you came for. Here's the blueprint. And I want to be precise, because precision is what separates this from every empty morning routine you've abandoned. The rule is simple. In the first window after you wake, before the phone, before the world, before the gate closes, you don't consume, you install. You use those minutes while the brain is still slow and open and suggestible to deliberately set the state you'll carry into the day, instead of letting a screen set it for you. 4 movements. Done sitting, eyes closed, before your feet ever fully commit to the floor. First, don't get up. The body wants to launch into autopilot, to grab the phone, to run the program. Don't let it. Sit. Stay still long enough that you're the one deciding when the day begins, not your habits. This alone breaks the automatic chain. Second, name what you won't be today. Pick 2 thoughts you refuse to let slip by unnoticed. 2 reactions you've run 1,000 times that you will catch the moment they rise. You're not suppressing them. You're becoming so conscious of them that they can't operate in the dark. The moment you observe the program, you're no longer running it. Third, rehearse who you will be. This is the lever the whole video has been building toward. Remember the piano study? The brain reshaped by rehearsal alone, no movement required, so use it. Mentally walk through the day's predictable moments, the tense email, the difficult person, the moment you usually snap, and rehearse the response you actually want. See it, feel it, run it until it feels real. You're priming the circuitry before the moment arrives, so that when it comes, the new response is already installed. Fourth, generate the state before the proof. Don't wait for the day to earn the feeling. Bring up the inner condition you want, settled, open, awake, and hold it until your body recognizes it. Not affirmations in a mirror your body knows are lies. An actual felt state, rehearsed until the chemistry follows. This is changing the cause, not chasing the effect. That's it. No app, no purchase. A handful of minutes that almost no one spends, in the one window when they'd actually take. Now, if you've made it this far, you're not the average viewer. You're not the person who clicks away the second the dopamine dips. You're the rare one who actually wants the mechanism, not the slogan. So subscribe. Not as a favor to me, but so the next blueprint finds you when you need it. And if something in this is landing on a part of you that already knew it was true, you already understand why. Back to it, because installing the practice is one thing. Becoming the person who never misses it is another. And here's the quiet truth. You will miss it. You'll wake up some morning, grab the phone, and lose the whole day to the old loop. That's not failure. That's the work. The question was never whether you'd fall back. It's how fast you return. Because every morning is a fresh window, a new chance to install a different self while the gate is still open. And what happens when someone actually does this, not once, but until it holds? That change doesn't announce itself. It arrives quietly. Let me show you. There was a woman, a 48-year-old nurse in Sacramento, divorced, raising a teenager mostly on her own. I won't pretend her story is dramatic, because it wasn't. That's exactly why it matters. She didn't find any of this through a crisis. She found it through exhaustion, the ordinary kind. The kind where you're not falling apart, you're just tired of meeting every morning already behind. She'd wake before her alarm, reach for the phone in the dark, and absorb the night's worth of messages, news, and other people's needs before she'd even sat up. By the time her feet hit the floor, she was bracing, and she'd carried that bracing into 12-hour shifts for years. She didn't believe the morning thing would work. She'll tell you that plainly. She thought it sounded soft, a little indulgent, the kind of thing people with easier lives had time for. But she was tired enough to try anything that didn't cost money. So one morning, she left the phone face down and just sat. 5 minutes. That was all. The first week, nothing. Her mind raced. She felt silly sitting in the dark. She missed 2 mornings entirely and almost quit. But she'd heard something that stuck. That missing it wasn't failing. That the only question was how fast you came back. So she came back. What changed wasn't loud. There was no breakthrough morning, no flood of feeling. It was smaller and stranger than that. About 3 weeks in, she noticed she hadn't snapped at her daughter over something that would normally have set her off. She didn't decide not to. She just didn't. The reaction she'd rehearsed away in those quiet minutes simply didn't fire. She stood in the kitchen afterward, a little stunned, thinking, "That wasn't me." Or, "That wasn't who I used to be." That's how it came. Not as achievement, as absence. The absence of a reaction she'd had her whole life. The space where the old automatic self used to be, suddenly empty, suddenly hers to fill. She didn't get richer. Her circumstances barely moved. The job was the same. The bills were the same. The teenager was still a teenager. What changed was the woman who woke up to face them. She started arriving at her own life, a half step ahead of it instead of a half step behind. Coworkers asked if something good had happened. She didn't know how to explain that nothing had happened, except that she'd stopped letting the morning decide who she was before she got a vote. Here's the part she still can't quite put into words. She didn't become a new person. She became less of the old one. The reactive layer, the braced layer, the one that had calcified over decades of tense mornings. It began to thin. And underneath it was someone who'd apparently been there the whole time, just buried under 10,000 repetitions of a self she never consciously chose. That's the permission I want to hand you. Not the promise of transformation. Something quieter and more honest. That you are not stuck with the self you've been practicing. That the person reaching for the phone in the dark is a habit, not a fate. And habits, even decades deep, can be unwired one ordinary morning at a time. She didn't fix her life. She changed who showed up to live it. And it turns out that was the variable that mattered all along. So the question becomes, what does this actually make you underneath? Not what you do differently, who you become. That's where we end. So who do you become underneath when you start living this way? Not what changes on your calendar, what changes in you. The first shift is the deepest, and it's a shift in authorship. Most people live as the effect of their world. Something happens out there, and they feel something in here. The email arrives, the mood follows, the person is short with them, the day curdles. They're downstream of everything, reacting, always reacting. And when you live that way long enough, you stop believing you're the one writing the story at all. You start to feel like a passenger in your own life. The practice quietly reverses that. When you set your state before the world gets a vote, you stop being the effect and start being the cause. That's not a productivity tip. That's a change in identity. You move from "this is happening to me" to "I am the one deciding how I meet what happens." From passenger to author. And once you've felt that even a few times, felt yourself choose your state instead of inheriting it, you can't fully unfeel it. You've seen behind the curtain. You know the lever is in your hand. The second shift is your relationship with discomfort. Because here's what nobody warns you about change. The new self always feels wrong at first. Unfamiliar. Uncertain. Your whole system reads unfamiliar as unsafe and pulls you back toward the old loop, which feels like home precisely because you've practiced it 10,000 times. Most people mistake that discomfort for a sign they're failing. It's the opposite. The discomfort is the proof you've left the known and stepped into who you're becoming. Once you understand that, you stop fleeing it. You start to recognize it as the feeling of growth, not the feeling of error. And the third shift, this is the one that changes everything else. You stop needing the outside world to hand you your inner state. Think about what that actually means. The familiar way of living is one long negotiation with circumstances. I'll feel okay when the money comes, when the relationship works, when the stress lifts. You're forever waiting for permission from out there. But when you can generate your own state from within, that whole dependency loosens. You're no longer at the mercy of every passing event. You become harder to knock off center, not because life gets gentler, but because you stopped outsourcing your interior to it. That's a kind of freedom most people never taste. Not freedom from problems, freedom from being defined by them. And notice what this does to the morning specifically. The morning stops being a threat you brace against. It becomes the one reliable place where you remember who you've decided to be. A daily reinstallation, not a chore, a return. You're not forcing discipline anymore. You're coming home to a self you're actively choosing. Here's the quiet truth underneath all of it. You were never going to find wholeness by adding the right circumstance. Wholeness isn't assembled from the outside. It's a state you practice from within until it becomes who you are. And the strange mercy of it is that the practice was always free, always available, sitting untouched in those first minutes of every single day, waiting for you to stop reaching past it. You don't change your life and then become someone new. You become someone new, and your life rearranges itself around the person you've become. So let me leave you with the one thing this entire conversation was secretly about. The thing you might not have seen coming. Here's what this was secretly about the whole time. I told you at the start that there's a 90-minute window every morning where your brain is physically unlocked, and you probably thought this video was about a morning routine, about waking up earlier, or putting the phone down, or some new habit to add to a life that already feels full. It was never about the morning. The morning was just the clearest place to see the thing that's true all day, every day, your whole life, that you are far more often the cause of your inner world than its victim. The window simply makes it visible. It's the one moment when the gate is down far enough that you can catch yourself in the act of becoming and choose differently. So the real question was never what should I do before 10 a.m. The real question is the one underneath it. Who are you when no one has told you who to be yet? Before the messages, before the news, before the world reaches in and sets your frequency. In that silence, who do you choose? Because that choice, made in the dark, before the proof, before anyone's watching, is the one that quietly writes every hour that follows. You don't have to believe me. That's the beauty of it. You can test it tomorrow. The gate will open whether you use it or not. The only question is whether you'll be there when it does. Now, 2 things before you go, and I mean both of them. First, send this to 5 people. Not the ones who'd nod politely. The 5 who wake up braced. The ones who reach for the phone in the dark and lose the day before it starts. You know exactly who they are. This might be the thing that reaches them in the one state where it can actually land. Second, leave a comment, an honest one. Tell me what you reach for first thing in the morning, before you've decided to. And tell me what you want the next blueprint to be about. I read them. They shape what comes next. And then, close this. Put the screen down. Sit with it for a moment before the world rushes back in. Because here's the line I want to leave you holding. The one this whole conversation was built around. You don't wake up as who you are. You wake up as who you practice.